Okay, well, that came a bit earlier than expected. We haven't been gifted a free LC Lord outside a major content drop in quite some time now, but I guess the gods over in Horsham HQ deigned to notice us little minions and throw us a big old bone. And we now know beyond a shadow of a doubt what that Avatar of Cain image at the tail end of Festtag was hinting at. Beastlord Rakarth of Karan is the new free lord coming to Total War Warhammer 2. He will make his debut on March 18th, a couple days before my birthday. Beastmastering is a tough job in the cold, desolate north. Someone's got to do it though, because manticores, hydras, charybdis, and black dragons are an important element of the Dark Elf war machine. Their conflicts with the Azur and raids along the Bretonnian, Imperial, and Norscan coasts would be a hell of a lot less effective, if not for the mighty monsters tamed at the business edge of their lashes. Really since the days of Anarion the Defender, many thousands of years ago, the elves of Nagaraith that would eventually sunder Ulthuan and become the Dark Elves had an affinity and innate empathy with magical creatures, a tool they would use as a weapon to force creatures into submission to help them do their bidding. But none have shown the natural aptitude and cruelty one needs to succeed in this line of work quite so well as Beastlord Rakarth, the greatest of his kind. When he was merely 8 years old, his father tried to break and train the mighty black dragon Brachus, but was unable to do so, and ordered that the beast be killed. Rakarth convinced him to stay his hand, and demanded that if he was able to calm the creature, that he would take it as his mount. With a cold, piercing stare, he looked right into the black dragon's eyes, and the dragon stared back, recognizing this was no ordinary dark elf. From that point on, they forged a bond built on the foundations of bloodlust and war. And it's interesting because a few editions back, maybe in 4th, 5th, or 6th edition, I actually can't remember, Brachus was a savage dark steed that Rakarth rode to battle at the Fin of All Plains. Same battle where Tyrion and Teclis fought Malekith in a brutal civil war. And it was only after the horse's death that he named a black dragon and named it Brachus in honor of his fallen mount. In current lore, there is only the black dragon named Brachus, which of course will be his final mount selection after first gaining access to a Scourge Runner chariot and a manticore. He's an anti-large character on foot with high armor, kitted out for slaying enemy monsters and buffing his own. The Whip of Agony allows him to temporarily strip enemy monsters of their ability to cause fear and terror, which temporarily makes them vulnerable to fear and terror themselves, which means if a Star Dragon just landed in your back line and is munching on some dart shards, you can whip and nay-nay all over that blue eyes white butthole and tear around him with a Charybdis or a Hydra yourself. Sounds pretty freaking sweet. I don't know if that ability is going to be incredibly powerful, but the idea of it is very, very cool. He also comes equipped with the Beast Armor of Karan, which gives him a passive defense bonus when he's near large enemies. Now, by far, the most interesting detail of this reveal so far is this image right here of wolves, squigs, stegodons, and carnosaurs bounding into battle alongside him. From a lore perspective, this makes perfect sense actually, as there have long been rumors that his beast pens are a twisted menagerie of every single creature in the Warhammer world, all willing to do his dark bidding on the internet. Basically, he breaks them, he forces them to do what he wants them to do, and then he rides to war with a bunch of crazy animals at his command. So his campaign will likely require him to go to far-flung areas of the map to try and acquire these monsters from each continent. Monsters that he can then turn around and use in his armies himself. In the pantheon of free LC characters we've had up to this point, from a visual and design side, he appears to be shaping up quite nicely, especially compared to someone like Tretch or some of the other weaker additions we've had so far. Although, I will say it's interesting to note that he's not rocking the full gold face mask and the Witchfire eyes glowing in the darkness behind. Frankly, I think that would have looked more badass, but I can kind of see why they decided not to go that route. We already have two Dark Elf characters with gold face masks in a sea of black and purple, Lokir, Felhart, and Malekith, obviously, and it's honestly not that easy for a newer player to distinguish someone like Rakarth the Beastlord from Malekith the Witch King in this concept art. So I can kind of see why they shied away from that and decided to make him look way different. So he looks less badass right now, but probably more unique. There will be lots more Rakarth info in the coming days, but this announcement has some pretty massive implications when it comes to the Lord Pack launching sometime in April or May. I think a lot of people were kind of taking for granted the fact that just because the Dark Elves only had 5 Lords, and the rest of the Game 2 races had 6 or 7, that they were a lock to match up against the Beastmen in the next DLC. But as we talked about in my speculation video from a few months back, a full-on Druchii Lord pack would have been dorky, not dark. I don't think this Rakarth announcement entirely rules out Dark Elves for the next launch, but it certainly hurts their chances a lot. And frankly, I'm okay with that. Rakarth, Talaris Dreadbringer, Karan Darkhand, these are free LC type characters at best. They do not need to be headlining lords going up against Torax or Moonclaw in a Lord pack. Regardless of what we might think about Malice or Hellebrand getting the short end of their stick in their respective DLCs, the Dark Elves simply do not have a lot of units or appealing content left to add at this point, and banging out another DLC for them would have, at least in my opinion, been a pretty bad idea. Yes, there's some cool stuff like Marathi carving runes into Hydras to turn them into magic-resistant Spellthirster Hydras, that kind of thing. Yes, we could have seen an Avatar of Cain. I think that would be a pretty cool headlining unit, but other than that, there's kind of a dearth of ideas and choices to pick from, and I frankly think there are better choices. I also think that's true for the Lizardmen, High Elves, and obviously the Skaven as well. Warhammer 2 races have been done to death at this point. None of them need anything else right now. I'm not saying they can never get content again, but I think we should be focusing on Game 1 versus Game 1 Lord packs. I think that's the next logical step to keep that content gulf between Warhammer 1 races and Warhammer 2 races from widening any further. And this has been a problem for a couple of years now. Look at where the Dwarfs or the Beastmen are in terms of content compared to the Skaven or the Lizardmen. Getting any faction their third Lord pack before others have received their first or second makes for a very wobbly, unbalanced game, and that's not a good thing for Mortal Empire. So, Beastmen vs. Dwarfs, Beastmen vs. Vampire Counts, or Beastmen vs. Norska, or the Warriors of Chaos would be my top picks, and as I've said before, Warriors of Chaos would be the top priority for me, but the likelihood of CA reworking 2 Chaos factions in one DLC, Beastmen and Chaos, seems maybe a little bit low considering they didn't do Wood Elves versus Beastmen, so we'll see, but still I think Chaos is my top priority right now. As Creative Assembly themselves have said, they prefer that a Game 2 race be present. I don't like that. I think that's the wrong approach, but at the moment we will operate under that assumption, that a Game 2 race will be present in this Lord pack, which leaves either the High Elves or the Lizardmen as the most likely options to match up against the Beastmen. High Elves could get a sea-based Lord pack with Sea Lord Aisling, Lothern Sea Helms, Moorworms, and the Lothern Skycutter, and all that has the benefit of a clear theme, a unique playstyle, and cool units that bind the whole thing together, but thematically, it's a bit illogical if their opponent is supposed to be the Beastmen, because they're probably the most landlocked faction in the entirety of Mortal Empires, which means Oxyotl or Teto Echo might have just jumped into first place. The thought of a 7th Lizardman Lord right now, when other races only have 2, 3, or 4, kind of makes me cringe. But of the Game 2 races, unless they do something completely wild, like a Tomb Kings expansion, Lizardmen are kind of the only remaining choice. Again, Dark Elves can still be in this DLC, I just think it's a hell of a lot less likely now that we have a 6th Dark Elf Lord in Rakarth. And to be fair to the Children of the Old Ones, at least they have some cool stuff left to add, like the Troglodyte, the White Death Spinosaur that spits face-melting poison from across the battlefield. So we could be looking at a Teto Echo or Oxyotl Lord pack versus Torax the Brass Bull, Goros Warhoof, or Moonclaw Son of Morslib sometime in the next several months. It certainly looks like we might be headed in that direction. And while Oxyotl's true nemesis are demons, and his famous story is one in which he hid out in the warp, slaughtering the Neverborn from the shadows like some freakishly cute, bug-eyed boogeyman, I would certainly see him as a decent foil for a big, bruising combat lord like Torax the Brass Bull. Beastmen aren't his true nemesis, but they are still Chaos, and Lizardmen hate Chaos. There is some rivalry there, no question about it. Although a skinky Astromancer versus Son of the Chaos Moon could also be a thematic and interesting DLC as well. Teto Echo versus Moonclaw Son of Morslib would be a pretty decent choice. Crazy times for sure. We'll see how it all shakes out, and look forward to a lot more Rakarth coverage coming in the next several days. Should be a good time.